Welcome back to the Village Bonfire for another episode of the Wild Sacred Journey podcast. A podcast not just for your mind, but for your body and spirit too. Here we don't just talk theory. Instead, we compassionately engage with our lived experiences and a wide variety of topics together, all to invite the question, in these times we find ourselves in, how do we be more human? Thank you for being here. May these conversations awaken, inspire, repair, and evolve something deep within each of us and serve the wild, tender aliveness of our personal and collective hearts. Welcome back to another episode of the Wild Sacred Journey podcast. So as always, we begin with lighting our village candle, or lighting the candle that stands in place of the village fire. And taking a few deep breaths in and out. Just letting ourselves land and arrive. If as you're listening to this, you can call any threads of your awareness back from people, places, or things that are not right here and right now, perhaps you do so. And give yourself the gift of just being whole and present. And with us. I was just reading something the other day that was speaking about the difference between daylight and the firelight, and that like daylight, it's like our mind goes so many different places. And yet when we're in front of a candle or in front of a fire, kind of in the darkness, it's like there's this sense of like, oh, there's nothing else but just right here, right now, with the story, with whatever's present. Yeah, it does. It feels like there are so many things in our world sort of calling for our attention, tugging us here, tugging us there. And it's like, yeah, some days the biggest and best thing we can do is just be like, nope, I'm right here. And this is enough. And so from this place of enoughness, from there we can really truly offer up thanks. So we say thank you to the land that's holding us and nourishing us, to the plants and animals, all the beyond human kin that surround us, to this wider ecological web of which we are but one part, one moment in time. And we say thank you. Maybe even say, I love you. And so, yeah, with that, we arrive for our conversation, today's conversation. So I have today as a guest, Claudia Olivos. And so I first encountered Claudia back in, it was through her Sacred Mothers and Goddesses Oracle deck back in, I think probably 2019, maybe late 2018. I don't remember exactly. Mm-hmm. But yeah, she had done a Kickstarter and had self-printed her first Oracle deck. Now it's actually got a whole publisher and printer. And anyway, but I managed to, I got in the door and got one of those original decks. And it's a really powerful, beautiful, both are really powerful, beautiful decks. And so I, became a big fan of her work and just, the energies that she channels as she creates her art and her jewelry and her ritual tools and sort of all the different consciousnesses that she's tapped into in her way of accessing them. So and so I have had my own beautiful journey through some of what she's brought through. And so I was really excited to ask her if she'd be willing to come on, and she said yes. And so I'm thrilled to have her here today. And so I'll read you her bio. So, oh, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you
You-
so much for that introduction.
yeah.
I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah. Thank you. So yeah, Claudia's bio. So Claudia is an artist, mystic, and curandera. Her creative practice weaves art with myth, nature, the cosmos, intuition, and the magic of spirit and a love to serve the collective. She works in oils, watercolor, sculpture, and clay. And her creative praxis, Sacred Mothers and Goddesses Oracle, is a collection of deities from around the world created through intuitive channeled energies of the divine feminine. She has exhibited her art in art galleries, theaters, international art fairs, museums, schools, and universities, both nationally and internationally. And her art and oracle decks are coveted and collected worldwide. She's the recipient of numerous recognitions and awards, including most recently the Carta Award for the Best Tarot and Oracle Deck Guidebook 2023. So that was, yeah, very cool. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And her work has been featured on the cover of numerous novels, anthologies, journals, magazines, and books. She holds a BFA and a BA in psychology from George Mason University and an MFA from Vermont College of the Arts. The founder of the International Visions Gallery in Washington, D.C., and former art professor, Claudia now spends her time working full-time on her art, living in both her native patrias, Washington, D.C., and Santiago, Chile. And she is currently working on the second Sacred Mothers and Goddesses Oracle deck. I'm super excited for that. And a few other projects to include journals, workbooks, and a Dia de los Muertos and Halloween children's book due to come out in 2024-25. So yeah, so welcome,
Thank
Claudia.
you. Thank you so much. I am so glad to be here.
Yeah. So I like to start each episode with kind of inviting you beyond sort of your, vast expertise and skills and kind of that professional bio. What's something you'd like people to know about you, or what kind of just feels like it's coming through today that you want to share about kind of the forces that shaped you, or sort of who you are and sort of the social fabric of things. So whether that's lineages or whether that's role, your role in your community, or whatever that might be.
Okay. I can share some of my lineage. I was born, as you said, in Washington D.C. I have two patrias, two
Mm-hmm.
countries of origin. So born in Washington D.C. My father was a diplomat, and so he traveled.
Mm-hmm.
And but both my parents were Chilean, so I was raised in Chile. My father then lived in Mexico for quite a bit, and so I spent a lot of time and all my childhood vacationing in Mexico also. So I took in a lot of that culture, and my father had
Mm-hmm.
a great love for Mexico, Dia de los Muertos and all
Mm-hmm.
that. And and then we moved back to the US, where my mom and my stepdad became evangelicals.
Mm-hmm.
And that also had a lot to do with, the shaping of me and my spirituality, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I come from a background of having been, Latina Catholic,
Mm-hmm.
in Chile being a very progressive country. It's a very small country. Um, it's very different than the rest of South America and Central America. Um, and so the religion is not as strong. We have a lot more closeness to the earth,
Mm-hmm.
and so I was raised with a little bit more of that. But then here in the US, the whole evangelical thing brought in a lot of angels and demons and different kinds of energies to work with. Um, and so that those things kind of shape me in my working now, as a shamanic witchy
Mm-hmm.
priestess, right? And so I work a lot with herbs.
Mm-hmm.
I work a lot with Mother Earth, and due to this evangelical thing that my mother and my stepdad went into, that was something that was very hurtful to me as a young preteen and teenager. It led to a lot of pain into my adulthood. It caused me to get married at 17,
mm,
and and then getting out of that, it was how like the oracle deck came to
mm,
be.
mm, mm,
And it was actually because, like I said, I had been brought up Catholic, but not Catholic so strong as in some other countries, but still like Mother Mary.
mm,
And you'd see a lot of images of Brazil. You have the big Jesus on top of
mhm,
the mountain in Brazil.
mhm,
So in Chile, we have the Andes, which are,
mm,
largest, but
mhm,
there is a smaller hill, not as big as the mountain in Brazil, but we have Mother Mary. That's who we have on
mm,
top of our mountain, you
mm,
know? So Mary is really important to us. And when I moved here and they became evangelicals, Mother Mary was demonized
mm, mm,
because they see her as idolatry, right?
mm,
And I was made to get rid of all of that, of my little sculptures and all the things, not that I had been an avid Catholic, because like I
mhm,
said, it's not so much like that, but still there is still like a much more of a devotion there than, for example, here in the
mm,
US,
mhm,
from what I've observed, just my
mhm,
experience.
mhm,
And so then I went through the evangelical thing I was very interested though in like the whole demon thing,
mhm,
and the whole spirit thing. I think there's power in all of that.
mm,
There is
mhm,
power. I
yeah,
experienced really powerful things within the evangelical church, even though there was like lots of things that were so hurtful. It's kind of like how I became to know my power,
mhm,
you
mm,
know.
mhm,
Um, and then in coming out of that, all the retaliation from my mother for not listening to her, them forcing me to get married when I was young, etc. I started trying, still always attracted to the spiritual. Um, since I was a little girl, I wanted to be a nun even when I was little.
mm,
I wanted to love everybody, all the
mm,
animals and all the people, and I thought that's what nuns did.
mhm,
And so fast forward where, I'm realizing that I need to leave the church. It's not my thing, the evangelical church. And I started working on an angels course. I was doing a lot of work with healing from the mother wound, right? Which a lot of us women have.
mhm,
And so I joined some courses, a lot of them which had like art journaling and that type of thing. And so I was invited to do art journaling with several women, and we did an angels course here in our studio. This woman came down from New York. I'm in Washington, D.C. And they were like 8 women that flew from different parts of the country, and we were here for like a weekend, and we worked with angels, and it was magical. I mean,
mm,
it was crazy. And so after that, I went to Mexico and we continued with like an online part of this. And we were supposed to connect to an angel. Now, when we had been here in the studio, it was incredible. We all saw things that coincided, like all this magical stuff
mhm,
happened
mhm,
with angels, right? Just with
mhm,
angels. And I'm in Mexico and we're supposed to still be working with this and calling forth an angel to work with us. And all I keep getting is Mother Mary.
mm,
I just keep, and I'm like, and I'm in Mexico. Of course, I'm seeing Mother Mary, like I'm arguing with spirit. I'm like, come on. I'm seeing her everywhere because I'm in Mexico, you know?
mhm,
And then like one day I woke up and there was a white rose floating on the pool where I was
mm,
staying, and there were no white roses. I was staying like in a tropical area. And, that's one of Mother Mary's flowers. And then we were driving, it was New Year's, and they burn effigies in Mexico, like life-size effigies. I've
Mm-hmm.
never seen that before. And so
Mm.
I was like, let's do it. And so we were driving, looking at them. They're kind of like, it's very, very different. And there was one person who had a little table with little things that they were selling, and when you're out being a tourist, you look at stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I went up to the table and I'm like, what do you have there? And she's like, oh, they're Mother Mary sculptures. And I was like, and I was astounded because she kept showing up for me. So I just sat there for few minutes, just like, and she saw me and she goes, here, take them. And I said, that's okay, I'll pay for it. She said, no, they have broken pieces, take them all. And she gave me something like eight. I have one. I have one right here.
Mm.
8 little sculptures. I gave them all away except one that I have here. Um, and it was just undeniable that Mother Mary was calling me back.
Yeah.
And so I painted her. And she was my first sacred mother goddess, and that was where my healing journey began from from having had her when I was little, as somebody that I felt, was an energy around me. I felt angels around me when I was little also. But then all of that had been taken away. But even when that was taken away, I was introduced to another world that was, very witchy, really.
Mm-hmm.
The whole evangelical thing is super
Mm-hmm.
freaking witchy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And
Yeah.
so then from Mother Mary, Artemis came through, and I really
Mm.
didn't know much about oracle decks. I was not really into goddesses. When I started channeling the goddesses, I didn't know who they were. I had an intern who was in high school, and she would remind me. She would be like, "No, that's, whatever." And she knew who they were
Wow.
because, they were coming through. I had instructions from spirit not to really research them.
Yeah.
Now it's changed. Now they still come forth when they want to, and they still kind of show me the way they want to be painted, but it's different now. I know more, when I
Mm-hmm.
started painting
Mm-hmm.
them, it was just it was it had to be incredibly magical. I think that spirit knew that because otherwise I might have gone like, I was into like ETs and things.
Uh-huh.
I didn't know anything about this, because in being an evangelical, mythology was seen as evil. So
Mm.
even in college, I had signed up for a mythology course, and my mother, I was in college, said she would stop talking to me if I didn't drop it.
Wow.
So yeah, I was already a mom, and I was still listening, you know. So so yeah, that has been my healing journey. And then, interesting, going back into further into ancestors during COVID, one of my cousins, I knew I had Irish in me.
Mm-hmm.
So for my maternal grandmother, they're Irish, and of course I have Spanish, and of course I have like Native American from Chile, which is
Mm-hmm.
Mapuche, which we all have that in Chile, a little bit of Native American and a little bit of Spanish, and then it
Mm-hmm.
varies. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of us in Chile, by the way, do have Irish, which is why a lot of Chileans we have freckles.
Oh, interesting.
So if you see like someone with dark skin and dark hair and they have freckles, it's very possible that they're Chilean if they're Latino.
Interesting. Okay.
And but during COVID, I found out that um, I have ancestors that were Sephardic Jews.
Ah,
So now
okay.
now like my hair makes sense. My nose, who knew? And they're all
Yeah.
and that side of the family, they're very strict Catholics to date, and nobody has talked about it. But it was like someone sent the email, and it was like an email with like all this documentation that my cousin found out, and they're all doctors. So these are, very intelligent, progressive people. But I think that, that's like they just cannot. But
That's so interesting.
isn't it? Isn't it? And I've
Yeah.
always thought like I always thought like Sephardic Jew sounded kind of cool, it kind
Uh-huh.
of, I didn't quite know what it meant, but
Uh-huh.
to me, like it was like, oh, that's cool. But I found out not only were they Sephardic Jews, which most of them came from like Arabic places,
Mhm.
and going into Spain, why
Mhm.
that's why there's that Alhambra, where there's a lot of Arabic
Mhm.
stuff.
Mhm.
And but also I have the exact date where one of my ancestors was burned at the stake for being a
Mm.
Jewish witch.
Mm. Mm.
So, and I have the exact date, I have her name,
Wow.
you know.
Wow.
There were more of them that were burnt, and that were, you know, they converted to being Christians. But a few of them, I guess, refused to. And then there's this one that apparently had they accused her of some witchy things. Um,
Mm.
and then they converted, which I an old friend a long time ago, a sculptor that I met that was a friend of my dad's. He said, you're Jewish. And I said, really? And he goes, yeah. And I didn't, my hair only gets like this with humid, otherwise it's straight. And it just kind of became this really, it didn't used to be this curly. If you look at pictures, it's like, this is another weird thing that's happened to me. But I found out, and this is really interesting about Asherah, goddess Asherah that's back here, that when the Jewish people had to leave and they had to change their names, they changed it to fruit trees.
Mm.
So my name is Olivos, which means
Mm.
olive trees.
Olive trees.
hmm And so he
Mm.
said that, and he said, "You're Jewish," and he was right. He told me that like, I don't know, 5 years ago, and
Mm.
a long time ago.
Mhm.
And the thing with Asherah, who is the wife of God, right, mentioned in the Bible 40 times. She is still, oh, I get chills. I might cry. She's
Mm.
still represented by fruit trees. See, I cry.
Mm.
To date
Mm.
in the Jewish religion. It's beautiful.
Mhm.
And it's just beautiful how, things, and there's so many things that are hidden. Like we don't
Yeah.
know that about Asherah. You know, um, Asherah is represented by poles, and
Mm.
Moses held a pole.
Mm.
He was using the representation of the goddess when he was leading the people through. See, I get very
Mm.
emotional.
Mhm. Mm. Yeah.
All the stuff that's been hidden, and the world, has could be so different if we didn't hide all this beauty,
Mm.
and how men have been supported by women, by the sacred feminine. It's
Mm.
Moses being supported by the pole,
Mhm. Mhm.
which represents Asherah, because she was a fruit tree and they disappeared her.
Mhm.
And so that's how they could represent her, just by a pole.
Yeah. Mm. I mean, so many there are a couple, like, threads that I feel like I'm hearing particularly coming through in sort of everything that you've just shared, and, like, one is that, like, yeah, like, that power is power, and, like, how we use it determines, like, whether like, what it's in service to, right? Like,
Oh yeah.
sort of like but then also this thread of, like, wisdom, it finds its way forward
Mm.
somehow,
Oh yeah.
and it's like, yeah, whether it's like in this coded symbolic language, that then it's like you start putting these pieces together and suddenly this whole world of wisdom opens up that was just like underneath the surface in the subtext, between the lines kind of thing. But also like how it's in our bodies too. And, and in some sort of energetic field that we can tap into. Jung probably would have called it like the collective subconscious, and
hmm
different indigenous wisdom traditions from around the world might have their own like cosmology and their own term for that, but some sort of like massive energetic blueprint,
Yeah,
that it's like,
it's the primordial mother.
yeah,
It's Pachamama.
yeah.
It's Pachamama, Mother Earth. It's in every culture they have this, whether, many indigenous cultures that believe that the world was formed on the back of a turtle,
Mm-hmm.
the turtle representing sacred feminine, I mean, but it all goes back to this, and what's so important about that is that the sacred feminine energy is all about, it's all about love. It's
Mm,
all about evolving as spiritual beings towards this understanding that we are all one. There's enough for all of us, and it's all we want is just to love and be loved. And you know, um, and there's just so much stuff that's always bombarding us, and we just have to keep focused on that. And I
mm,
think that that's what this energy represents. And, there's all kinds of energies out there because if not, we wouldn't be in such a mess,
mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but this is an energy that I think that in all these different traditions and all these different ways, human beings have been tapping into it from the very beginning,
Mm-hmm.
whether it is lighting a fire,
Mm-hmm.
you know, whatever it
Drumming.
is. Yeah, drumming, and it's just like this powerful force that is not a force that destroys.
Mm,
It's a force that creates,
mm,
you know and that's why, again, we will go back to like the sacred feminine, and where all the little figures that have been found, to
mm-hmm.
you know
Mm-hmm.
from
The Venus of
going from
Willendorf, and yeah,
all of those. So we
yeah,
have like the drawings on the caves
yeah.
that kept track of, you know, the animals that we're eating, and all that. And then we go into worship, so it's physical health and it's emotional health,
Mm,
and it's knowing that there's this huge energy out there that in the end people call different things and
mm-hmm.
work with in different ways. And it's powerful though,
Mm-hmm.
it's very powerful if you know and recognize that, you know how to work with it.
Yeah. And there's something about it that comes through, it's so funny. I remember I was in a meditation one time, and I mean, before I even knew that, yeah, many, at least indigenous peoples in North and South America, I think, I don't know about the rest of the world, have that idea of like the earth being carried on the back of a turtle, right? And kind of
Oh
that,
yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I had this vision of that come through in a meditation one time, like long before I
Mm,
knew that that was a thing. And then I started like looking it up online, and it's like, oh, this group believes that, and this group, and it's, or like what you were talking about with the angels. Like I remember at one point, and when I was deepening into my energetic training, and and more of that shamanic world, I had this green light come into my room one night, like right before I
mm,
was about to fall asleep. And I was like, oh, like, who are you?
right.
He's like, oh, I'm Archangel Raphael, and I'm here to like work with you and through you. And I was like, oh, okay. And like, I didn't know anything about the archangels. And then I looked it up later, and yes, he's accompanied by the color green, and like he works with
Hmm.
healers, and and all of that stuff. And I was telling the story to a friend of mine who was also in the same training, a couple days later. And I just gotten to the point where I was like, oh yeah, I think Archangel Raphael came through the other night. And she was like, oh, he came to me too. It was like this green light came in my room. And like,
Wow.
and it's like that stuff that you're like, okay, we can't, either we're all having this collective illusion, right? Or like there's something deeper that we're able to tap into. And it
Oh
like,
yeah.
it goes beyond words. But I mean, it's like, even as even in moments where, whether through colonization or persecution, or like whatever all those different forces have been that have, diaspora in different ways, right? Like whatever the different forces have been that have interrupted, like lore lineages, kind of,
Hmm.
like those myths or the languages or the places, right? Because I feel like language, myth, and place all kind of tie together
Yes.
in
Hmm.
really beautiful ways. And so whatever the forces are that have like disrupted sort of those continuing of those chains, and sometimes it's just evolution, that disrupts it, but it's like somehow those pieces are still there and we can tap into them. And that's like,
Hmm.
there aren't like even words for that, but I don't know, I guess if he yeah, I mean, you shared a little bit about sort of how Mother Mary started coming through and all the different ways that you felt like you were getting signs about her, like, but I think sometimes as people start to connect with that, it's so easy to sort of discount those things if we um
Right.
don't have like support or other people in our lives being like, no, that's a sign, like pay attention to that, like that's not just a coincidence, or that, and so I guess like, yeah, what's kind of, I guess I'm interested in teasing this thread out. I don't know that there's an exact question here, but yeah, kind of what has that been like for
Some
you, sort of,
examples.
yeah,
Yeah.
following the signs, or
Yeah.
what are some examples, or how to how to I mean, you've always had art, so that might be some of
Yes.
where the symbolism and psychology, like especially if I don't know if you did Jungian, although I feel like art and Jungian often connect really well. So I have this guess that you
Yes.
probably did a lot of Jungian psychology.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so kind of that language of symbolism, like how do we start to trust that, or how do we know, like at least for you, what's been your experience like tapping into those consciousnesses or that wisdom or those voices, or like, how do you start to feel or know the difference between them, or the truth of them, or
Yeah.
the
That's really interesting. I haven't thought about it in the way that I'm thinking about it this moment,
mm,
because I was going to talk about the fact that I've always been very interested in surrealism, but at the
mm,
same time, I had this really deep interest in symbology, symbolism, and the word that begins with an E. Can't remember, but when Sergio and I met in Mexico, and he was a college professor, I was a college professor. We were both painters, and one of the things that we both had an interest in was uh, prehistoric, um, native indigenous type of art
mm,
and symbolism, which is weird because at the same time, my main thing has always been the surrealist. And what do the surrealists do? They basically are channeling. I
mm,
mean, the surrealist, what makes a surrealist is that they just painted, supposedly,
mhm,
without really thinking about what they were creating.
mhm,
And
mm,
when I was in college, which is when I started, painting in earnest, I was also writing. Actually, after my father died when I was 17, and that's when I started. I wrote for like a year. I couldn't paint, and all my poetry was pretty surrealist, and I loved reading surrealist poetry, and like I got into surrealist cinema, and so that was my thing, surrealism. And again, the part of surrealism that I liked was like that, like weird, nonsensical, nothing
mhm,
makes, you know.
mhm,
Um, I I later, when I was doing my MFA, I got into magic realism. That then has
mm,
symbolism,
mhm,
right? And
mhm,
I had to write a thesis, and I had to defend my thesis, and I used, for example, I had to defend that it could be found in things other than just in literature.
mm,
So I gave the example, rather than giving the example of my art, because that was harder. So I gave the example of film and the movie, if you've seen it, like Water for Chocolate,
mhm,
right, where she's making magic with her food,
Yeah.
right? And then I forget the name of that movie that Tom Cruise was in where it rains frogs in the movie.
Oh, I don't know if I've seen that one, but I think,
I
yeah.
don't like him as an actor, but there's
Uh-huh.
only two movies I like him in, and it's this one, which is a very magic realist movie.
Was it Magnolia? Is that no, that's different.
No, yeah, but
That
it's
has sort of
something.
a weirdly dark, fantastical kind of vibe to it. But yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Anyway.
it could be Magnolia. I don't know. Might be, maybe where he's being like a preacher, salesman, or something. That's magic realism. So anyway,
Hmm.
that's symbolism.
Yeah.
Um, so when I started working, when I did Mother Mary, obviously I knew who she was. Then I painted Artemis, and I did not know who she was. Now, at the time, I had been working a lot with soul collage. Are
Mm.
you familiar with that?
Vaguely. Yeah.
Okay, it's basically you make collages and you can use them as an oracle deck, right? And I had been facilitating workshops for adults, and I'd been working with children with that too to get them to express their feelings, so that was the extent of my knowledge with like cards,
Mm.
right? And I heard about goddess cards, and I just, I Googled it, and I saw that there was a goddess that had a deer. And I thought I had painted Mary with a deer, you know.
Mm. Hmm.
And then I found out she was Artemis. And so then I put the hunting thing on her after that, right?
Gotcha.
But at first she was, she had the veil, and she was like another Mother Mary. And so I found out she was Artemis, and I was like, and I didn't know anything about goddesses, nothing. And so so then I ordered a deck. I ordered a goddess deck. And so then the third goddess that I started painting, I would just start like everything, just paint an oval. And I've never planned my paintings. See, that's like the surrealist thing. I've never done
Hmm.
sketches. It takes me a long time to do a painting because I never know what I'm gonna do. And this
Hmm.
is previous to even to the goddesses. I would just paint, so I've always painted intuitively.
Hmm.
And people would always tell me, what do they mean? I don't know. What does it mean to you?
Hmm.
Or some people would tell me, oh, I see a lot of orbs. What do they mean? And then I had orbs appear to me like angels also, except these orbs were not angels because I've also had angels appear as light. And so, all these different experiences. And I got the deck. I would start painting. And I would think to myself, like, mind you, I never had used a deck, but I would tell myself a number, right? And I would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I would look at it 7, and I would be like, I'll be damned. It looks like exactly what I've been painting, you know?
Wow.
And I was like, so, and Sergio didn't believe me. And I said, you pick a number. And so he did whatever, 6. And, so from then on, like that's how they started coming
Mm.
through. I can't tell you like how many came
Hmm.
through that way, but a few. And then I didn't want to keep using that deck because I didn't want to keep doing all the ones that that person was doing. But it was clear to me that I needed to make a deck before I even knew, before I had even touched a deck, you
Mm.
know?
Mm.
And so then they started coming through in, in different ways. Let me see if I can. I was going to give you the example of the one that I'm working on now. Um, but I don't, I don't usually give them away, but I
Uh-huh.
guess I will. I guess I will. So, so I have a list, of all the goddesses that want to come through, and sometimes that people tell me, some resonate with me and they go on the list, some don't. And then I always say just like 6. 6 is my number, just like, I don't want to be hearing from all these energies that want to come through,
Yeah.
you know. So like 6. And and then I had 2 vying for to be first. And then somebody in one of my lives said, uh, said her name, and I'm not going to say her name. Okay.
Okay,
I'm going to
that's
surprise
fine.
you all. Yeah.
Yeah.
So somebody in one of the lives said her name. Then that I got off that live. I went to Instagram and there was someone offering a class on that goddess. Then said he came in my room and he goes, "Hey, do you remember that, that you were going to paint this goddess?" So within, like, I don't know, 4 hours, I heard her name like too many times so
Yeah.
sometimes they'll show up like that. Um, Another time I had somebody that wanted a custom painted, you know, um, this was Kateri, who's a saint. She's
Mhm,
a Native
mhm,
American saint in the first deck. And I had a lot of trouble with that because she's a Catholic saint and she's Native
mm,
American.
mm,
And I was like, I can't do this. This is going to cause a lot of problems.
mhm,
I can't do this. And I was like, I can't, I'll paint it for her, but I'm not going to include her in the deck, and said he was like, you need to include her. You've got Mary Magdalene, she's a saint. I was like, but this is different. She's Native American, and that, I don't know about that because we're working with colonization, and then someone sent me an old picture that I had taken, like within hours of having this conversation. Someone sends me a picture. I still get chills. And it was me standing beside what I always said was one of my favorite places and sculptures in the world, which is in Santa Fe, New Mexico, that I love. Outside this little church, there's a sculpture of Kateri, and I've always
mm.
loved it. And I had no idea that's who she was. And there's a picture of me next to her. And I've always felt like, see, I just have chills. I've always loved her. I was screaming, "Oh my goddess, I'm gonna paint her." And they were like all these, but they were more than that, it wasn't just one thing. There was more
Yeah,
to that,
yeah.
Um, my other more recent story would be for Persephone. It was for the second deck that I started painting her in it took me 2 years to paint her.
Mm,
And I kept saying, okay, I'm gonna bring her out in the spring because that's the Demeter's daughter, and she comes out in the spring, and so
mhm,
we'll celebrate Persephone. And I just could not do it. I kept painting. I mean, I was actively layering tons and tons. I was painting her, right?
mhm,
And she was there, but I always felt like I needed more and I needed more. And I was like, okay, I need to get her done before I go to Chile in March. Didn't get her done. Came back. A whole year went by.
wow.
And I was standing there, and I mean, it can drive me to tears sometimes, and I'm like, what do you want? What do you need? And she was like, just paint it black, paint it black, paint it black. And then that song comes on, which I
Mm,
love, that song from like the
mhm,
60s,
mhm,
Paint It
mhm.
Black.
Yeah.
See, chills again. So she wanted to be the other. I didn't know because I still don't read a lot about, I still don't do that. Like
Mm,
I know I'm going to paint a goddess. Now I know more about them, but I still don't research
mhm, mhm,
until after I'm done. I research them when I'm about to present them to the public.
mhm,
So once they're all done, and I love
mhm,
it because there's all this magic that still
mhm,
happens.
mhm,
Like what happened with Ashera that moved me so much because she's the
mhm,
latest one that's come out. So that's
mhm,
kind of new information for me.
mhm,
I didn't know any of that, and I have a staff, I mean, all this magic.
mm,
So with Persephone, um, she wanted to come out in it because her other name is Cora. Her
mm,
spring name is
mm,
Cora, is
mm,
not Persephone.
mm,
She wanted to be Persephone, the queen in her rightful throne, because then I found out after I painted her that it is said that the reason that Hades needed her there is because she's really over him.
mm,
And so he needs her because there's a story that predates that, and it said that she was really the queen of Hades, and then, then she has to leave, and then he has to bring her back so they can be together because she was really over him. And
Mm, mm.
so, that's her really most powerful form, taking back her rightful place there, and
The underworld.
yeah, in the underworld. So that whole painting just kind of came through without me understanding anything. And for example, what did I paint after knowing more about her was her dog,
Mm,
the three-headed dog.
mm,
But pretty much everything. And if you look closely at that painting, there are light colors coming through that I left there. And that's
mhm,
that's the underpainting that was Cora,
mm,
but she wanted to be Persephone.
mm,
And as she started, once I realized, and I covered it with that I paint in oil so I can do that layering. And then, I mean, and she was blonde before. She didn't want to be blonde, She definitely wanted that darker thing. So that's how they come through a lot. And another thing too is many of them have come through, or I would say all of them. Let me make sure that that's true. I think so. Like yes, all of them have come through for me personally at a time where I have been working with that energy,
mhm,
or I
mm,
have been in need of that energy.
mhm,
And that even happened to me with the only male saint that I've ever painted.
mm,
That I didn't know what it meant. It was a saint that that someone commissioned. It was he hid from the Inquisition
mm,
behind a web of spiders.
mm,
And so, and that's all that I knew, right? And I painted that and the spider. I wish I had I don't think that I documented that painting,
mm,
but after I sent off that painting and I shared, it must be somewhere because I shared it on social media. That's when I look at the significance. And so the symbolism of that saint, you know how they all have like Saint Anthony's for
mhm,
lost things or whatever.
mhm, mhm,
So this saint is for protection against calumny, against gossip about you. And I was
mm,
going through a horrible time of somebody spreading my mother spreading rumors about me. And
mm,
and and it was horrible, horrible. And the whole time I was painting him was some of the toughest times going through that,
mm,
you know?
mm.
And so the energies that come through have been a blessing and very healing to me.
Yeah,
And I see that as charging the painting too, you
sure.
know. So it's being charged with that healing energy because I've been going, it's like I feel it. I don't know, in my mind's eye I see it sort of like a burning to make it sacred.
Yeah.
Like the
Mm,
fact that I kind of go through something
mhm,
like the phoenix type of thing, like I
mhm,
go through something when I'm working with it, you know.
mhm.
So that's, yeah, that's another magical thing about it. But yeah, all of them have come through with a story like that.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah. I love, um, I'm just feeling it, just sort of some of the different threads there from what you shared. So there's always so many you could follow, and it's like, okay, where are we going, at least in this moment, right? And there's a piece that you sort of said at the beginning that was like around the divine feminine sort of being about creation, not destruction,
Oh
and
yeah.
it's so interesting because, we also always have these her in her destructive form or her warrior form or her like death bringing form or death honoring form or whatever, right? And so and some of what, as you just spoke to kind of that, like what you go through each time something comes through
Mm,
you. And like, you know, I mean, energetically, yeah. I mean, I feel that I've done that before with like, yeah, sometimes it's consciousnesses, sometimes it's landscapes, right? Like I went somewhere one time and it was like one of the stillest, deepest, it just felt like deep silence, in like a really beautiful way. And I was sitting there having a picnic lunch and I was like, I don't know that inside me I ever feel this way. And like,
mm,
and so I was like, okay, what would it feel like to like let that silence into my body and like to just let myself attune to that? And can my system, if you think about it like tuning forks, okay, that's vibrating at this space. Can I invite my system to come to match it, and like what does
mhm,
that show me, or what does that teach me, or what does that like um allow me to like bring forth and through, in different moments. And so yeah, I'm hearing that some in what you're sharing about this process of kind of going through stuff, but then it also like, yeah, I was like, that also reminded then of that idea that we um yeah, the like, you're talking about the phoenix, the fire, right? It's like the destruction that leads to more creation, not the destruction that's just for like
right,
destruction's sake, but like the
right.
destruction that's part of the process of creation.
Tlasolotl, which that's exactly what goddess Tlasolotl is about,
Mhm, mhm,
right?
mhm,
About, right, destroying in order to transform,
mhm.
for something to be totally transformed into something that's going to serve you and the whole for a higher purpose.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Mm. Can feel so tricky sometimes. I feel like being that hollow bone or that channel or that conduit, right? Because it feels like, or I don't know if tricky is the right word, but um I know for me sometimes in my own life, it feels like there's just this like there's just constant waves of like being worked, and
Oh,
it's like,
yeah.
and now the next energy is coming through, and okay, now I've got to like learn to steward that one, or like
Hmm.
let it, and there's something about like, I think that piece of, can we let ourselves, rather than trying to mold the world or what comes to us into some idea. And I think this might connect back to sort of what you were saying about the surrealism, right? Of like, they just channeled whatever it was without trying to like fit it into our ideas of what was proper or how the world
Right.
works, or like, right. And so it's like, yeah, I think there's a piece as we start to, if and when we feel called to like connect in a deeper way with this wisdom that's still present in the cosmos, in the earth, where in the archetypes, in the where, wherever it's stored in our bodies and our DNA, right? Wherever it's stored, that it's like, I think a piece of becoming prepared to be the channel or to be the conduit or to be a vessel that can receive that wisdom and then interpret it in ways that are effective is like, yeah, we have to unlearn that piece about like molding the world to like fit into our preconceived notions, and we have to
Hmm.
like be willing to be shaped by the world, in a lot of ways. And
Yeah, be shaped by our experience, which is worldly and outer worldly, right?
mhm,
And I
mhm,
think that that's the problem with religion, that you're put into a box of an experience, and there's so much more out there that we can learn
mm,
so much from, right?
mhm,
And like one thing that you said about how there's so many things that are similar in different traditions, right? And for example, when I was studying the shamanic traditions of the Andes, I was really floored by the fact that the Quero Indians, which is from the mountains of Peru, are the ones that I mostly study under, and they hadn't come down for the mountains until the 80s.
mm,
And when they came down, they didn't even understand, what it is for streets to have names. They thought that meant
mm,
that the streets talked and said, "I'm so and so."
mm,
So they had like no concept like that, but yet they had a concept of the chakras. They
Mhm.
had a concept of, how to play with energy using objects, which I love. That's why we create like altar pieces, because
Mhm.
we are in a 3D reality, in this meat suit. We are existing in this world where we touch things. And so these tools help us to work with this energy, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
That's why I like altar work and
Mhm.
offerings so much, and the cards and working with them. I mean, like I said, I didn't know what they were. And then once I started working with them, and seeing how magical they were. And I'm impressed all the like every day I draw a card. I'm like, whoa,
Mhm.
it's just
Mhm.
crazy, right?
Yeah.
And then working with tools, doing the altars and actually, being able to harness that energy.
Yeah.
That to me is so playful. Like the universe is so playful, you know
Mm.
and we can, and with like in with the ghettos, they use also something very similar to runes
Mm.
as well.
Mm.
There's a lot about creating your reality, and that's what it's called. It's called creating your world. And they
Mm.
believe in like the underworld, our world, and an
Mhm.
overworld.
Mhm.
And you heal yourself with charms. That's why we make charms also. I need to talk about this more, and teach it and everything. But the thing is that it's magical no matter, how we choose to harness this energy.
Mm.
It's so powerful and it's so magical. It's there for us, through meditation, through the cards, through, lighting a candle and some incense, ringing a little bell. They're just, doing all these different things with, but you were talking about like that peace that I feel like it's, to me, it's so much about groundedness and knowing that all will be well, and really focusing on as much as you can on whatever is positive in your life at that moment,
Mm.
which could be just the fact that, I have comfy pillows right
Mhm.
now.
Mhm.
It could be something very small. Could be like, eating some ice cream, best thing, go for a walk, right? Being in
Mhm.
nature. But the more that you do that, the more that you work with these energies in these magical ways, even when you don't really believe in it, it's
Mhm.
amazing how your world transforms.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's one thing that I really want to share, like with people. I had wanting to start like a women's circle in person, and I did in Chile for a little bit. Then COVID happened.
Mm.
Now I'm trying to do one online but the main thing is that is for women, because mainly for women to come together and be able to support one another in creating this magic,
Mm.
right? In creating our own reality, in reminding each other that all is well, to
Mm.
focus as much as you can on the best thing that you can at that moment, and
Mhm.
how that really changes the energy. It
Mm.
really changes the energy. I've seen it happen in my life. And the more that you use these tools, the more that you can hear that. And I remember that when I was in the church, the evangelical church, I was actually a youth pastor,
Mm.
and I would teach my teens. It wasn't just me, there were four of us, but we would teach them that, in order to be more in touch with the Holy Spirit, and to hear the guidance from the Holy Spirit, you had to, keep your light switch on. You had to be matching that energy,
Mm.
right? Same thing, you
Mm.
know,
Mm.
it's the same thing for the different energies that we want to be able to be wanting to attract, be tuned in to a certain energy.
Mm.
And yeah, I mean, that makes me think about, different things where people will come to me for advice, when they're going through really tough times, and it's okay, for example, to grieve for the loss of something. But at the same time, we need to allow ourselves time to come out of that grief
Mhm.
and breathe, and then little by little, we can come out more and more and stay up there more and more. But if we keep thinking about it, focusing on it, thinking that by doing that, we're respecting it, honoring it, everything, but we're just
Mhm.
kind of staying in that energy for too long.
Yeah.
We need to come up, whatever it is, loss of a job,
Mhm.
loss of a loved one, loss of a relationship, because those are the things that we grieve over, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, just like, and it's a daily practice, I wrote a book for Blue Angel Publishing, a children's book, right? And they recently told me that they're not going to be able to publish it
Mm.
after 2 years of work and all that,
Mm.
and I was bummed. And that's something that I grieved, and I allowed myself a little bit to be bummed. But then I was like, but wait, I have options. I come
Mm.
up for air, I have options. I can self-publish, whatever. Oh, but I'm bummed because that was 2 years, now I'm behind on my second deck. What da 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 da.
Mhm.
Whatever
Mhm.
stories,
Mhm.
but the thing is that you don't want to stay there. I need it, so I allowed it myself a little bit of the grief, and I'm like, I'm done. I'm gonna focus on all the good stuff, you
Mhm.
know. And so that's like a really easy example, comparing it to loss of people in your life or jobs and
Yeah.
stuff. But I'm just saying, it's something that it takes practice, and it's something that we can do. We can do. It seems. I remember, years ago when people that were my elder women. There's a group here in DC that used to get together where I met so many beautiful women walking the sacred feminine path, and I remember them telling me, just focus on the positive. And I'd be like, don't tell me
Yeah.
that.
I
It would piss me off so much, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's years later. That was like 6 years ago, right? I was
Mm.
going through a really painful time with where my mom and my siblings stopped talking to me because I was painting the goddess, and they were saying horrible things, and I was losing a lot of people. And it was right when I found these women. But that
Mm.
was a gift from spirit.
Mm.
That was a
Mhm.
beautiful gift. I just, and I heard it, and I kept it, this thing that they were telling, even though it was pissing me off and I didn't quite
Yeah.
understand it. Oh, I would be so angry, and I didn't understand it, but still it was in my knowing. And then I grew into it. And now
Yeah.
and now I've seen it work in my life. And I
Yeah.
know it pisses some people off. So sorry if anybody's hearing this, but you'll get there. You just practice, even if you don't believe in it, you just practice it. Just think, okay, I'm going to whatever. This is bullshit, but I'm gonna go and not think about this. I'm gonna go and focus on something good. And the more you do it and you realize that it just freaking works, it's amazing.
Yeah. Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like I've gone through different cycles with that in my life, in the sense of like, I think there's so much in our culture that's very bypassy and avoidant,
Oh, well,
you
yeah.
know? And so I think part of people's initial prickly response sometimes to that, like, oh, just focus on the positive, is that
Oh, right. Well,
it's
I wouldn't
like,
I wouldn't be no contact with my mom and siblings if I only focus on the positive. So that's a really good point. Yes.
yeah,
Yeah,
there's
everything.
like, there's a time and a
Yes.
place, right? For like
Oh,
honoring.
yeah.
But it is
Yes.
interesting because I do feel like it's a pendulum, and I do feel like the pendulum has gone from sort of like this culture of sweep things under the rug, don't talk about them, keep the positive spin on everything, the like Stepford wife, like face made up, perfect dress all
Hmm.
the time, kind of that like it's all about the pictures. And I do think some of that's generational. I know like my
Oh, yeah.
grandparents, like there's a lot about how things looked, and it mattered more
Oh,
how things
yeah.
looked to other people than like how things actually were, you know? And
Absolutely.
so I feel like we've had this pendulum swing to like, no, I want my anger to be honored and it's sacred. And no, I want my grief to be honored and it's sacred. And like, all of these things, right? And and it's interesting. And even within my own personal life, I felt that, where like, I kind of went from this, like, everything's fine, as like internally, I'm like falling apart and completely fragmented, like, to then this like
Right,
space of like,
right,
I'm going to build these altars to this and connect with this and honor this and like stand in my truth and allow myself to be messy and like, right. And then, but it feels like I'm swinging back now to kind of this place in my own life where, yeah, I reached a point where I'm like, okay, great. I've made this practice of being with my grief and being with my anger and being with my this and being with my that. But like, where's that actually getting me? And it's like,
right.
we do have to be with those things. And I know, I've heard Kimberly Ann Johnson, who does a lot of somatic work, speak to this. And then, there's some, and so I'm sort of probably hybridizing a little bit some of what she's spoken with some of how I conceive of it, like in myself, or what I see with clients, or how it kind of comes to me. But, yeah, this idea that it's like, it was like that thread came in and then went out. Let me see if it'll come back of what the example was I was going to give. Um, hmm. Yeah, it's not coming back right now, but if it'll come back. But
But
yeah,
you know, but
it's
I think you're completely right, and that's why I was saying that, you have to allow yourself to go down there,
yeah,
but you have to come back for air.
right, right,
And so what a lot of people do is that they're honoring it so much
right.
that it's becomes
You
a
make a home.
wallowing.
Yeah,
Yeah, and it's not is not beneficial.
yeah,
It's not beneficial.
yeah.
So you allow yourself for that space. And
Mm-hmm.
you might come back to that space for your whole life, you
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
especially with like death of loved ones, you
Mm-hmm.
know. We
Yeah,
we come back to that, time and time again.
yeah, yeah.
But we can't stay there. Like I could start thinking about my dad, which I used to do and cry and really get into that, and I could get myself into that for days, you
Mm-hmm.
know, but I learned I can get into that and then I can, I need to get myself out,
Yeah.
around Dia de los Muertos every day. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
every day, every year, so I
Yeah.
honor my dad. And because he loved Mexico so much, so I honor him for that. And I'll put on rancheras. That's not Chilean at all, but it's what he loved, And I will cry and everything. And I used to allow myself like the whole day to be just in that. And then I was like, why am I doing this to myself?
Mm.
And so now, okay, I'll allow myself, I do the altar, I put on the music, and then that's done.
Yeah.
Then that's done because I don't need to be, that's not doing anybody any good. It's not doing my dad any good. I
Yeah.
mean, he's like, doing his thing,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he wants me to be happy. He doesn't want me to be there like, still like,
Right. Right.
crying about him. I mean,
Yeah.
I've got to live my life, and and in living my life to the best of my ability at every moment is honoring him,
Yeah.
even 100%. So
Yeah.
and you just apply that to many things. I had to learn to consciously turn that off. And I was um I was stuck in Chile during COVID
Mm.
for like almost 2 years
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because I adopted my dog, Pasita, at the time where you could, well, first they closed everything. You couldn't fly with dogs
Mm-hmm.
at all. But
Mm.
she was, supposed to be my emotional support dog.
Mm.
Both my dogs, were emotional support dogs. My one dog flew back and forth. The other one, with a little thing from the doctor because I have anxiety, and it was no problem. All of a sudden, they changed everything. I could not leave the country. Emotional support dogs no longer can fly except underneath, and I did not want to risk her dying. So I had to train her to be a service dog.
Mm.
And to have a service dog, you just need to teach them one thing that they help you with. And because I still have, like, the way that my trauma will show up is I can get down into, like, if something happens and I can bring that sadness over, like my mom,
Mhm.
not talking to me, or, something. Usually it's that, I mean, I'm no contact 7 years, but still there's pain. Like I said, there's some
Mhm.
pains that come back, or something that will happen that will hurt my feelings. And I start to cry a little bit, because I've already given it, I've
Mhm.
already been given it cuerda in Spanish. I've been giving it, like I've been winding it up
Mhm.
in my
Mhm.
heart and my thoughts, and I've been winding it, thinking in that hole until I make some kind of noise, like I'm
Mhm.
about to cry. And my dog, I trained her to come to me when I
Mhm.
cry. So she'll jump on me for a treat, and so that I mean, that's exactly what you need to do too, to get your, I mean, and I can, I'm getting myself
Yeah.
down into that. I'm like winding it up. All this stuff already happened. Or I'm just
Yeah.
in my feelings. That's
Yeah.
not what I'm doing right now. It's not my reality right now. So what can I focus on right now? You
Yeah.
know? And how can I bring grounding to that moment? How can I bring a little bit of joy? Wow, I have my dog. We made it back to the States. We didn't die from COVID,
Mhm.
whatever.
Yeah.
I have enough money to where I can buy them healthy treats. I live in a house that's in a nice, whatever it is that, that I can get myself back to and out of, whatever I was. So I think that,
Yeah.
that's the thing too. So it's
Yeah.
not about this toxic positivity or this bypassing that is painting everything to be, oh, it's okay. Or like if you're
Right.
poor, you're like, I'm rich. I've got to confess I'm rich.
Right.
Like I saw that happening in the evangelical church,
Mm.
this confessing of the positive. Same
Mm.
thing.
Mm. Mm.
People are like very sick and you can't say you're sick because it's bringing in the bad energy,
Mm.
right? So that's that toxic
Yeah.
positivity, and that's like that bypassing. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
everything exaggerated doesn't make any sense. It's not going to be good.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what, yeah. So that was the piece that it's like, that I it came back to me, that thread. But yeah,
Okay.
the difference between venting and like actually unwinding something,
Mm,
and so it's like if the water's boiling and you just like vent the lid, but you don't actually like change the temperature or like do anything to actually change the circumstances. Yeah, okay, you vented something, but if you put the lid back on, it's just going to pretty quickly boil over again, right? And
yes.
so much of like when we share or when we cry or when we whatever, it's like it's okay to do those things if we're doing those things from an unwinding place where we're actually
Mm,
somehow doing that in a way within a framework that's going to contextualize it in a way that allows it to actually unwind or release, right? The trauma, the pattern, the whatever we're like tapping into, as
yeah, I
opposed to if
love
we're
that.
just like lifting the lid to vent it. And so
Yeah.
it's like, and we can feel the difference in those. And I end up having to work with clients on that a
Oh
lot. It's
yeah.
like, oh, you can feel, I'm like, nope, nope, you're venting. And they're like, oh, you're right. And it's like, okay. And it's a frequency difference. And a lot of it is like, are we holding what we're sharing in love? And this kind of brings us back to that frequency of that divine feminine and what you were talking about earlier. And, I mean, I think it's also divine masculine. I think it's both, for me, it comes through very clearly as both, but that space of that like vast container that just holds us all,
Hmm.
and it has love. And if we're not tapped into that love or we're not feeling held by love in some way, then no matter what we say, it's just kind of activating a frequency that then just stays there, as
Right.
opposed to like if we somehow have and I think that's some of where like when we had rituals around that more, when we had like communal rituals. And so that's where something like a day for honoring our ancestors, right? And it's like, yeah, you have a day, out of the year where you go and you honor them and you cry and you laugh and you like do your thing. And then that was the day for that. And now we move on. But there's like a container for that to happen, knowing that, yes, we're
Yes.
always going to feel grief. Grief is like a lifelong thing, but it's like part of how we don't get bogged down in it is having spaces and times where we're allowed to feel it and be with it in a larger container of love, of comfort, of whatever. And then, okay, now we move on.
Yeah. And then what's so beautiful with something like Dia de los Muertos, it's a collective consciousness,
Yeah.
so it's a beautiful, powerful
It
container.
amplifies. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Well, and
absolutely.
as you were speaking too, I mean, that was one of the things that was kind of coming through for me was it was like, you know, all these different faces of the sacred mothers and goddesses, right? And they're all just slightly different flavors of like this one vast, unnameable soup or whatever we want to call it, right?
Hmm.
There's this like vast, unnameable, pretty much almost unconceivable thing. And so it's like there's all these different faces, and that's sort of, I think, some of the belief of polytheism, right? Is like part of that is not that there's like a bajillion gods just for the sake of having a bajillion gods, but that each of those gods represents like an aspect or a flavor of personality of like this vast, wholeness. And so,
Hmm.
and some of what you were, I don't know, for some reason I'm like my brain was drawing a little bit of a connection between like that and then this cosmology of like the different worlds, right? Underworld, middle world, upper
Oh,
world, that
yeah.
like a lot of places share some concept of that. Again, there's some
Hmm.
differences, right? And so it's the same with like our emotional journeys, right? Or our trauma journeys or our, whatever, our wound journey, whatever we want to call it, like these spaces where it's like, yeah, I have this moment where anger comes up and like there's a face for that and it's allowed to be there. And it's not this like all encompassing thing. And so I think that's also part of that container, right? Is like rage comes up and she's just one face and grief comes up and that's just one face, and now I'm
Right.
going down into the depths and I'm going to be there maybe for a little bit. I feel like I'm just now coming out of probably a 4 or 5 year kind of like underworld journey in a lot of
Mm.
ways, and like it's gone on for quite a while and I was sort of surprised at how long it's been there. And I've still been functioning. I've still been fine. And all of that's been going on in the background, but it hasn't been all consuming. And so it's like, yes, the overall arc of my journey has been down into the underworld, but it's like I've still had these ways of connecting to the upper world, the middle world, and so it's like, yeah, you feel like you can move between these realms, and so that's some of where I think that cosmology and
Oh,
and
right.
when we were more connected with those
Hmm.
cosmologies and with these sort of animistic, land-based, polytheistic ancestral myths, like, or mythical
Hmm.
ancestor, however, all these different ways that we connected with these different aspects of what it is to be human, of what it is to be souls, of what it is to be, and it's like all of that in some ways elders us, I feel like, or teaches us or offers us the potential to have this wider understanding of what it is to like not make a home in any one place or like any one emotion or any one,
Right.
you know.
Yes, I agree. I mean, I see when I first started painting the goddesses, and like I said, I didn't understand anything. And I found out that they were people that worshiped the goddess, which I didn't know. And they were,
Mm,
and I wasn't really sure. It didn't really quite resonate with me. But then I was like, but I'm painting these, like it should resonate with me. But then I began to understand that these are different energies. I also didn't understand like for why for me like they came through in a different way, and I would look at it maybe another goddess deck, which I made a point not to buy any except for the one. But I did look online. Once when I would be searching for a goddess or something, I would find, and I'd be like, oh, that's totally different than how she came through for me.
mm,
And so but like I said, every experience everyone has been so, you just saw me cry over
Mm-hmm.
her, and like discovering all that. It has just been so incredible. So I know that these energies are so real,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that they just come through. And however it is that some people really relate to angels,
Right.
and I mean, I do too, but that I have had the goddesses that chose to come through me. So, but the energies are not like, I was working with angels before, and I can say that, the energies, they're different, but yet it's the same thing. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
it's just something undescribable, powerful,
Mm-hmm.
everywhere around us and within us, um, magical, So,
Yeah.
yeah, they're different energies that come through them. I mean, through the cards, through the paintings,
Yeah.
and it's amazing.
Yeah. Hmm. Well, this feels like a beautiful place to start to wrap for today. Does that
Oh,
feel true for you? I
yes,
mean, I feel like we
yes,
could keep talking, but for
yes,
today at least. Yeah.
yes. Yeah, thank you. So I love it. I loved our talk.
Yeah,
It
me too.
made me
Yeah,
think about a lot of things, and
me as
I
well.
appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. Me as well. Yeah,
Thank
same.
you.
So yeah, I'd love to give you a chance to share, and I'll have this stuff in the show notes, but where people can find you, where they connect with you, how they can connect with the Oracle deck or the other different beautiful arts and ritual tools that you have available, and then
Sure.
also if there's any last piece that you feel like called to kind of share, or that you want to sort of close us with, you're welcome to speak that too.
Well, thank you. I think that the main thing really is what we've been talking about, which to me has been, I studied psychology. I was a mental health counselor. I went through a lot of difficult times trying to get therapy for, the things that I was going through with my family. And it was really difficult. And I found so much help and healing through the things that we were just talking about,
Mm,
through practicing these things that we were talking about, not staying, not swinging from one to the other, and not staying in that, but just knowing that, that all will be well,
mm,
that things, even if they are in a tough place, right? And if you're in a tough place right now, that, things will get better. And without the bypassing, but just knowing that we have the power at least over our thoughts,
mm,
And one thing that I tell people, don't focus on the past, focus on the now. And the other huge thing is that don't let other people steal your peace.
mm,
You know, it's not about us changing other people, it's about us changing ourselves. And a huge thing, and I know it's been a huge thing for me to work with, is, to learn not to let other people steal my peace,
mm,
you know?
mhm,
So you don't allow myself to get into things, into thought patterns that, have nothing to do with me.
mhm, mhm,
So
mm,
that would be, we can grow so much with, it's, again, it sounds easy. The more you practice, the
mhm,
easier it gets to do
mhm,
that. But it's been, huge help for me over any therapy, anything. It's been, that to remember that we can get ourselves out of a thought pattern,
yeah,
and we can have power, you know, over, not over just over our thoughts. Don't allow other people to have power. If we're already giving them so much power by making them upset,
yeah,
and then we're going to keep on being upset. We're giving them so much power. At least get over being upset,
yeah,
At least do that for you, you know?
yeah,
And it helps a lot. So
mm,
that would be my last
yeah.
very, very practical advice.
Thank you.
And
Yeah.
then as far as where you can get the Oracle deck, it is on our website, olivosartstudio.com. And I'll show you, this is our latest sculpture.
Mm,
She's not yet come out. This is Hecate. She is
mm.
a triple goddess. So she has
The three
three
heads.
heads. She is made of resin with
Wow.
organite. And then books. I am now making journals for download. So
Beautiful.
these are, with all the goddesses, you can print them yourselves. And so they're really affordable. And I
Amazing.
created a self-love journal, like a really thick one. And this one also is available for download with different things for crystals and spells. And on the back, it has these that you can cut out and use them as you pull your cards, print them out as stickers. And I'll be creating all kinds of other things. And then the other thing, my espíritus, that I will be
Mm,
making these into a mini oracle deck. I don't know when. I will be self-publishing these probably. But I want these to work with the goddess cards. I'm
yeah.
not sure how. I trust spirit will show me how, but yeah, these started coming through. These very, very different than the,
Yeah. They're so whimsical. In kind of
yeah,
like an ethereal, very otherworldly, like
right.
slightly
Yeah,
dark, but also like
they
beautiful,
are.
beautiful. Yeah.
They are slightly dark, and I want them to print them like this tiny, so you can pull them with with a goddess card
Mm.
and get some more messages out of it. So lots of things in the works, and more things to come.
Amazing. Hopefully. Can you hear me okay? Yeah.
Yes.
All right, beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I accidentally leaned on my microphone cord and unplugged
Oh,
it.
okay.
So I'm like plugging all the things back in.
Oh, I didn't see. I was like pulling my stuff
I
out.
know. I was totally into it too. Yeah, they're amazing. Yeah, and like I said, you've had so many amazing goddesses come through in the last like couple years, I feel like. And so yeah, I'm excited for the second deck, which
Me
I'll have
too.
some
I have a
those new
lot of
ones.
work left, but
Yeah.
I'm hoping to have another one come out next month. I'm gonna be
Mm.
hopefully finish her this weekend. Then
The
they need to.
the nameless one that you were hinting at earlier.
Oh no, I haven't started
Oh,
that one.
oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I haven't started that one. That I will
Yeah.
start her hopefully next week. Hopefully I start Monday. So I have
Okay.
one to finish now, and then I'll start that one Monday. But yeah, I mean, I think I have a lot of work. Because they are oil paints,
Mm,
because I paint slow, because I
mhm.
don't sketch anything, I have no idea. I just go for it. The one
Yeah.
that I'm finishing now, I've been working on that 3 years.
Wow.
I didn't know I didn't know who it was, and then I found out who it was, and I'm really excited about this painting.
I can't wait. So yeah, get on
Yeah.
Claudia's email list because then you get notified every time a new one comes
Oh
out or
yes.
follow on
Yeah.
social media. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Please
yeah,
do.
and
My
you can
TikTok was banned because I showed
oh,
a doodle that was was one of my full moon goddess ritual doodles, and so she was topless,
oh
and they banned me. One of my doodles. I mean, my doodles are so they're like doodles.
yeah, they're art doodles. Not
Well, yeah, and
yeah.
they're like, oh, it's this one. I know YouTube won't if you're gonna have this, but this one. I've had her on Instagram,
Yeah.
I've had her everywhere, but TikTok was like, no.
So
So, but I
interesting.
do have a new account there. And I'm hoping to go live there, to be able to go live there again. I do
Yeah.
enjoy conversations like this too. Are you on TikTok?
I'm not on TikTok. I've thought about it, but I just It's like too much social media. I can't
Yeah,
I can't manage all the different avenues and like,
it's true, but I really
uh,
love TikTok because TikTok is all about these type of
yeah,
conversations, you
yeah,
know? So
yeah.
that is one thing that I like about it.
Yeah, I'll have to feel into that. I feel like I'm in a phase where I'm sort of reevaluating my relationship with a lot of that stuff. I mean, I feel like I go through those cycles all the time,
Oh yeah, I
that
know.
like,
Me too.
if I didn't have a business left to my own devices, I probably wouldn't really be on social media. Like my instinct
Ditto.
is not to share. Like that's just not. And
Ditto.
so then I'm sort of like, what am I doing here? And like,
I
yeah. So
know.
anyway, it's
I
a whole
know.
thing.
Same here. I'm lucky that I could just, share my art. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but because I feel the same. I feel the same. I love it, but yet, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I love connecting with people and I love
Right.
conversations, and that's part of why I started the podcast is because I was
Right.
like, I do love that stuff. So it's not like I don't, it's just that there's something about the format of social media that just like is
Yes.
not, it's all soundbitey, which is like not really me. And it's like, it's just, there's
I
something about that
know.
format that just is like, I don't feel like I fit into it easily or well. And like,
Yes.
I feel like I could stretch myself and grow a little in that direction, but it's also like, okay, but is that really where and how I want to spend my time and energy is like growing into this, so anyway, it's a whole bigger
Yes. It's a
conversation.
whole thing. It's a whole
Yeah.
thing. I asked my pendulum. I was like, okay. I asked my pendulum and I listened because I really
Yeah.
didn't know what to do. So I did want to give up after being banned, but my pendulum said keep it. So
All right.
yeah.
Yeah. Well,
So
good
I'm on
pendulum.
all the different on all that different so on
Yeah.
Mondays on YouTube at 8 p.m. ET, and
Mm.
we do card draws, and I actually even have a weekly Oracle deck workbook
Mm.
has so that everybody that shows up on Monday, we can work with the goddesses together. So I always pull like one goddess for the collective, then I do a pick a card, and then I do a personal pull. So you could do all three, and then there's like But so this little group we do on Mondays on YouTube, if anybody wants to join us.
Awesome.
And then
Yeah.
I'm on Instagram Thursdays at 8 p.m. from the studio. So that's usually like a shopping day.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
All
Yeah.
right.
So I'll make sure I have all those links and everything from you and your
Okay.
handles on all
Thank
those places
you.
so people can find you and join
Oh,
you and
thank you.
for those things. And
Thank you
yeah.
so much.
Yeah. Well,
This has
thank
been
you.
absolutely lovely. So
Yeah,
wonderful.
it sure has. Yeah.
Hmm.
Beautiful. Well, good. Well, I'll invite everybody listening to just kind of take a few deep breaths in and out as we close out our fire today. And, yeah, we don't always transition so well. It's like we hop from thing to thing to thing to thing.
I
So,
love it.
yeah. So that's also the beauty of ritual, right? Is it helps remind us like, oh, right, opening things,
Hmm.
closing things.
Yes.
So yeah. So here we are starting to close and to wrap. And so, yeah. So perhaps you just acknowledge something that sort of stood out for you from this conversation or something that you're noticing in your body or in your environment or in your breath. And perhaps you focus on one beautiful thing that got stirred up for you from this conversation, because maybe there were some things that, uh, it's like sometimes the things that happen to us, like the quote unquote negative things, can get like coupled with an experience or an idea or a thought. And so it's like we can have a conversation that overall is beautiful, but it like tugs on the string and pulls this other thing to the surface. And so, yeah. So if there was anything that in this conversation that you were reminded of that feels like it's bubbling beneath the surface, just honor that and then find something beautiful or at least neutral. Maybe you even imagine holding one in each hand so that both can be true at the same time. Maybe when you feel yourself for a moment at the fire with me, with Claudia, with all the other folks listening, even if you don't know who they are, here we all are. Holding our beauty and our challenges together. And so, with that, we say thank you and we close out our fire for this time. And we know we can come back to it again next time.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you everyone for joining us. Hi, Kate here again. Thank you for gathering with us. Whether you've been here a while or found your way here thanks to today's guest, it means so much to me and the world I dream of to have you here. I hope you'll tune in for more of our conversations. We humans seem to be at a profound threshold and facing questions of deep impact for the future and the world. We need our full hearts and humanity as we sow seeds of change in these times of joy and heartbreak. I count myself lucky to be here now, around this virtual village fire, weaving our stories into a medicine with humans like you. As a community medicine space, this podcast is relational. It weaves webs of connection and mutual respect and care across time and space. If you appreciate and support the future we're seeding here, you can support the weaving of this web in a few ways. 1. Share episodes with friends and family or online with your community. It also helps the podcast immensely if you like, rate, subscribe to, or follow the podcast where you watch or listen, so you get notified when new episodes drop and new listeners find us as they search. 2. Join us on Patreon. Doing so supports conversations like the one you just heard and allows you access to live community gatherings and medicine circles and more as we continue to grow. It also helps me keep the space advertisement free so the conversations stay intact as they are. If you have questions, suggestions, connections, or would like to find out more about working with me, you can find me online at www.wildsacredjourney.com, on Instagram at wildsacredjourney_KP, or email me, kate@wildsacredjourney.com. Until next time, from my heart to yours, I release today's fire with a prayer for our individual and collective wholeness, connection, and joy. May it be so.